Hello everybody, today I wanted to show you how to annotate a game, right? So what do you do? How do you annotate a game? So I've just played a Northumbrian Congress and now I'm going to demonstrate how to annotate a game and put it into chess base. Well, unfortunately, in the last round I made a quick draw against an 1800, which is pretty pathetic. I mean, I'll actually show you how that game went. So okay, he took here. I went Queen A4 and offered a draw. So 5-move draw, right? You know, you're playing against 1800. You should fight on. But the kid's 13. He's underrated, but even so, I mean. But the thing is, I wanted to win the tournament, so it's like I thought he's probably going to take a draw, like almost certainly because of the rating difference. And it's a difficult decision because you're throwing away 4.2 rating points, but then you're guaranteeing that you're first outright. So obviously he could have played on and tried to win the tournament. So, you know, it's not like it's a one-sided thing where I'm doing him a favour. Obviously I'm favourite if I carry on. But I decided to make a cynical draw offer and he accepted. He had a very good tournament actually. He beat David Walker in the previous round. I think he beat quite a good junior in the round before that. So obviously underrated. But the first game today I want to show you, there was a game against Theo Khoury. Actually went the same opening, but he went Bishop B4 check. So we're going to promote that. That's what Theo played. But by the way, I have not analysed this with an engine. So all this is my own analysis of what I remember of the game. Obviously the game is fresh in your mind. It's easier to remember it. It's easier to remember the variations in my opinion. Theo played A5, which came as a slight surprise. I was expecting Bishop E7. So I think Bishop E7 is the main line. Not I really prepared well. I don't have a laptop at the moment, so I'm just... This is my home computer, back home now, so I'm... Yeah, maybe I didn't play... I played B3 because it was like... That was the end of my preparation, but B3 doesn't feel like the best move. Probably Queen C2 is the main line, right? Okay, I went B3 and... He castled. I went Bishop G2 and he played a move that surprised me, but a very strong move, but kind of very logical. C5. So I would give that an so always give annotations C5 exclamation mark, right? I mean, I think that's a good move because it's putting pressure on my centre. It's opening up the position where I'm slightly underdeveloped. I mean, there was an option of maybe going 94. I thought was interesting. There was another option. But okay, C5 felt like correct. I mean, I felt uncomfortable now. Like I felt like I could easily end up being worse. You know, for example, if you take here, he's going to take here, and then he's got this long-term bind on this squares on the queen side. Probably, I mean, that was an option actually because then I could play maybe A3 was possible, but then knight C6, I guess. I'm not sure. But I took, and actually, here I was expecting to take with a knight because I really didn't know what to play then. But the problem is I suddenly realised it's a trap. If I take here, he's got a good move here. So again, like, pause your computer and think about, you know, pause your video, think about what black would play here in response to that move. Well, I thought he was going to go Queen F6 and I was losing a rook, so that's already... So it was kind of slightly surprising to take with a knight because that looked like a difficult move to deal with. He's just going to very quickly go knight C6. Maybe you can go A3 actually and just play like a boring position like knight takes or queen takes. I mean, it's possible that it's just equal. Objectively, it's unclear. You could go A4 there as one possible move. So how do we evaluate? Sometimes you should put in evaluations. I mean, I felt like here, maybe unclear, maybe even slightly better for black objectively. Maybe the computer would even start to give a slight edge for black. But he took it a pawn, which is also, I mean, perfectly reasonable. Don't get me wrong, that was also fine. Good move what he played. But I was wondering if knight takes was even more testing. because you don't really want to go e4 either, because then he goes here and he's just hitting a lot of pawns. Maybe you can do this actually and take, and then he could even take with this pawn, also possible. By the way, we played this tournament in North Shields, and I've played it before, won it before. It's in the Howden Leisure Centre. But North Shields is quite a rough area of North Tyneside. So North Tyneside is really Whitley Bay, Cullercoats. It's the Geordie Shore really. Whitley Bay, Cullercoats, South Shields, North Shields, Tynemouth. Did I mention Tynemouth? Tynemouth's a nice area actually. That's a bit nicer. Whitley Bay's slightly nicer version, I would say, of. I stayed in Whitley Bay because there isn't, to be honest, I couldn't find a hotel in North Shields. But there is a Premier Inn nearby. But there's quite a lot of obviously dock areas are often quite rough, and there's a lot of low incomes living around there. A lot of drug addiction. When I was walking to the venue, I mentioned actually in a previous book that I had issues outside the venue with like ASBO type teenagers. And when I was walking to the venue this year, it was on a Friday night, I walked past a group of schoolgirls. One of them was carrying a stick, large stick. And she said, "Do you like my stick?" I said, "Yeah, it looks great," right? Tried to be polite, and then she said, "Oh, it's longer than yours." I thought, "Oh God, yeah, great. Thanks for the disrespect." So I walked on, and just a few yards later, I'm walking past these kids who are on a skateboard. There's a skateboard area near the venue, and one of them starts calling me a fiddler and a pedo. And I thought, well, I've not even had any interaction with you. So what happens if we give you a slap around the ear? You know. But yeah, unfortunately, that's what you have to tolerate. So, I mean, I quite like the area. I mean, there's good things about North Shields, don't get me wrong. You've got the ferry terminal there, which is a beautiful sort of area, and you've got the river. But it is quite a rough kind of area as well, I would say. It's got a rough edge to it. Anyway, going back to the game. Theo took with the pawn. So I'm playing against Theo Khoury, who is a very talented junior player. He's only 14, I think. So born 2010. So he'd be either 14 or 13, but probably 14. But he kind of reminds me, or he's got. I mean, not that I knew John Spielman when he was younger, really, or much younger, but he kind of seems like a young John Spielman. He's got a high sort of super intelligence, but slightly. Not as fidgety as Spielman, but yeah, he's kind of maybe slightly on the eccentric side, but nice kid actually. But yeah, I think he's obviously got a very bright future, as do a lot of these juniors. I actually played, most of the players I played were junior players I played, or younger players. First opponent was 20 something, I think. David, yeah, must have been in his 20s, a Greek guy. Played. That was a tough game. And in round 2, I played against 9-year-olds. I'll look at that game at some point in the channel. Phenomenal talent called Lewis Cheng, who's former British world under-8 blitz champion. First Scottish player to win a world championship since 1978, since Paul Motwani in 1978. So he's a huge talent. He finished joint second in the end. As did the player I played in round 3, who was an Indian player called Hussain, who's studying at Newcastle University, plays a lot of blitz online, and seems to be a very good player. And he had a very good tournament as well. I mean, that was a really tough battle as well. He was possibly a lot better at one point, or he was close to getting a big advantage. If he played the right continuation, it would have been very difficult for Black to find the right defence. But yeah, he's only 1500 FIDE, but he's 2270 English rating, and he showed that in his tournament. That he easily finished joint second. He won all his other games. He lost to me, but and then obviously today I played against a 14-year-old and a 13-year-old. So it seems to be the norm these days. It's just getting tougher and tougher for old farts. The sooner the senior tournaments arrive, the better. So anyway, so he took the pawn. and I castled. Is this right? Oh yeah, and he went a4. I mean, it was also possible. No, I think a4 was fairly decent. He could have also gone for knight c6 possibly, but Theo played a4, and I took on c5, and he took out the bishop. Thinking about it now, I don't know why I didn't analyse that move, but I guess he just takes back, right? Yeah, I was maybe expecting knight e4 actually. That was another move that I was considering, because, you know, how do you meet knight e4? It's not that obvious. Maybe, well, I guess I take, that's the point, right? So he went a4, which is quite obvious idea behind it. He wants to open up the a file, so I took on c5. He took back. I did consider b4. That might have been a better option, but the reason I rejected it, I thought he comes back here. Maybe he could also come back to a7 as another option, but I thought he comes back here very quickly, plays knight e4, sorry. Yeah, because I have to go a3 to the... I mean, I could maybe put the knight on a3. That was the only other thing. That possibly knight a3 was a good move. I wasn't sure. If I go knight c3, I drop the b pawn. If I go a3, he goes knight e4, which I didn't like. There was also the option of going maybe knight d7, knight c3, knight b6 was also a possibility to go put the knight on c4. Generate some... I think it's unclear anyway. I think he could have played this knight e4. Does it say I've not checked the engines? I don't really know. But I took there, and he took with a bishop, and I went knight c3, and he took here, and I took back, and he took on a1. Yes, I didn't want to... Sorry. So this is actually the main line, right? This is what happened in the game. A4, promote variation. Yeah, because I thought if I take with a queen, he's got options like rook a3. I didn't feel comfortable there, so I thought I'm better off taking the pawn. I've got a square for the knight on a4, and I assessed this position as approximately equal. So I'd always put assessments in when you annotate games. Put assessments in as much as possible. So he took on a1 after some thought. I think he was also maybe considering ideas like rook a6 or knight a6. Rook a6 was possible as well. But I mean, it looks natural to take. So rook a7 was... I'll delete that variation. Yeah, and I wondered if he should go knight e4 here. This is the move I was expecting, because I can't take, because a pawn takes, and then he's hitting the bishop. So I'm losing material, right? And if I go here, he goes f6. Or maybe even queen d5, but probably f6, right? And I can't save the bishop as far as I can tell. Or I need a stunning move to... so well, I can go rook d1, but it doesn't really change it. It just moves a queen. So after knight e4, obviously I can't take. So I'd have to do something else. Now I was looking at knight a4. Possibly rook d1. No, rook d1 is losing because of knight f2. It was some other line that I calculated here, but it was quite a long variation, but I can't remember what it was now. Oh, maybe it's something like knight a4, bishop a7, bishop b4, rook e8. Yeah, there was some weird line where he takes an f2 and then he has queen b6, but with a knight on a4 that probably doesn't quite work. So it must have been some other variation. Possibly knight b5 here, but knight b5 he's got queen b6, it doesn't make much sense. Or knight... Yeah, so knight a4, but then he can take on d2, I think, and then play any move is good. Like bishop a7 is reasonable, because if I go here he just comes back again. I mean, I have knight f3 and then rook d1. That is a variation. Bishop e6, maybe e4. But something feels wrong about this for white. I mean, taking here is probably too much, giving up the queen, right? You could even play something like this. Knight d7 takes bishop g4 or bishop f5, and he's got compensation, 2 bishops. I mean, also after rook d1, he doesn't have to go bishop e6. He's got other moves. Maybe knight c6 is an option. Maybe d4 is an option. Not sure. The d4 knight e4 is a little bit annoying. But also here he's got other moves like bishop b4. Not sure what the best move is. Also bishop e7. Put bishop on f6 immediately. I'll give that as interesting. Bishop a7. Not sure. Bishop b4, and I would say that's probably equal. Bishop a7, unclear. I took with a knight. He took back. No, sorry, this didn't happen because he didn't go knight a. He didn't go knight e4. I mean, he played it perfectly reasonable. He could have also maybe gone h6 to prevent my next move, but he went knight c6, which was perfectly reasonable. He was playing pretty fast actually. And I felt uncomfortable because it was the first time in the tournament where I was like down on the clock. So I realised this is like a really tough game, and I do very well to win. And actually, a draw would not be a terrible result. So I went bishop g5 because at least now I've got a plan, which is to take and then take. And possibly bishop e6 was maybe running to e4. I wasn't sure. Because if he goes here, I have a plan that I'm going to take, and then go knight d5, and when he takes, I go knight d2 or knight h4, and I think I've got more than compensation here. This just looks good for white. Although objectively, maybe it's not good that great because at the end of the day, he's pawn up. But I just felt with a fractured pawn structure, this would be quite bad for him. I mean, I could also go knight d5 immediately, right? Because it kind of transposes after something like this. And yeah, again, maybe even knight h4 is an option, and then try and go queen b1 and put the knight on f5. Or, you know, if he takes another pawn, maybe I have moves on rook b1, but I suppose queen c3 is possible. Knight f5. Yeah, maybe I should go knight d2 then to try and put the knight on e4. I'm not sure. But he went bishop e7, which is also fairly normal. Although I was actually fairly happy to see that, because I felt I took some of the sting out of his position, or my position, in the sense that I'm over the worst. There's no danger here for white. Thinking about it now, maybe he could even go here. And then here, and then allow this and go queen e6, because now he's got a double attack. I mean, what can I play? How can I defend the pawn? Well, I could go knight c3 and give up the b3 pawn. Oh, there's queen d1 there, but then he's got rook d8, which looks awkward. Yeah, so I felt like, yeah, I mean, there must be lots of ways for black to at least equalise. Yeah, and he's got compensation. Because at the end of the day, he's got a bishop pair, so what's like an extra pawn? It's not that big a deal, right? If knight d2, queen e2. So, okay, so he went bishop e7, right? So we're promoting that. I went rook d1, natural move. So it's kind of like, it's ended up a little bit like a Tarash. And funny enough, I think they had a Tarash on the next board actually in the Walker game. The Walker was better, but he messed up later on. Bishop e6 was a good move. So desperately trying to find a way to be, you know, put some pressure on d5 here. So I looked at, for example, queen b1. But then he's got lots of moves. For example, queen a5 might be possible. But even after queen b1, he could go h6. Bishop takes f6. Bishop takes f6. Knight d5. Bishop d5. e4. Bishop takes e4. And if rook d8, bishop b1, and black's winning. Or queen e4, queen takes d1. So obviously you don't have to take on d5. I mean, but also after queen b1, h6, bishop f6, knight d5, bishop d5. If I play a move like knight e1, then he could just go knight d4 and he's winning. Because if bishop d5, queen d5, e3, he's got knight e2 check, or knight e2 check, king f1, knight c3, or even knight f3 check. Both are good, I think. So queen b1 I didn't like. I mean, I thought about knight d4, but I didn't like the fact that he's got moves like queen b6. Wasn't madly keen on this. I mean, I also considered e3. It would look very wet, you know, a very wet move. But it makes some logical sense in the sense you're blockading the pawn, but I thought he would just go here. And be very comfortable, if not, maybe not better, but... I mean, I could go queen c1 here, maybe, but then queen a5, knight e2... Not sure, actually. This is maybe not better for white, but... It's some kind of fighting position, I guess. But I'm quickly going to go knight d4. But he can go queen b4, and if knight d4, then trade, bishop d4, rook d4, queen b3, and he wins a pawn, for example. At knight f4, I'm fighting for comp. Knight f4, possibly. Queen b3, maybe knight e6, f e6, bishop h3. So lines like this are possible. At knight f4, he could probably take, and then yeah, I mean, I think he's got a good game here. I mean, I'm a pawn down, and his pawn, yeah. The only thing I have in my favour is the light squares. His light squares are a bit weak. Other than that, he's doing very well. So, so I didn't like knight d4. I didn't see a use. I thought he was like knight e1. I just probably objectively too slow. So in the end, I decided to go for knight b5 because at least I had some idea of putting the knight on d4. I expected him to play h6 here, actually. Also, maybe queen b6 was an option. Maybe that was the best option. Because knight d4, then he can go... Maybe knight e4 anyway. Ah, but then knight c6. Bishop g5. But I think just h6, right? And after this, I then go bishop c5. And I think he must be doing fairly well here. Although he's still very sharp. I mean, there's lots going on. Maybe rook c1's... Can I get away with it? Is rook c1 or was that losing? Maybe I can just get away with this because now suddenly I have threats like rook c5. So maybe this isn't very good. Maybe queen b6 wasn't right. I mean, he went knight e4, but that's obviously it's not a bad move, but it's just a bit dull for him. In the sense that he's not fighting for the advantage. So I went knight b5, yeah, and then he went knight e4, and then, yeah, I mean, probably I'm comfortable here, right? So I should trade because the more exchanges we have, the more the pawn on d5 becomes a weakness. So he took with the queen. So now I thought a long time about what I should play. I looked at lots of different moves. I looked at knight e5 I wasn't happy with. And knight e5, the problem is he plays moves like queen c5. This is a problem. Because knight d3 has queen b5. I looked at knight bd4, but I just thought it doesn't create any kind of threat. Maybe knight bd4 was better. That was the first instinctive move that I thought of. I thought about queen a3, but I thought the ending is not better for white. So in the end, I decided to play knight fd4 because I thought at least that gives me opportunity that if I need to, maybe I'll pull the escape hatch and start trading off pieces and try and make a draw. You know, not feeling terribly comfortable about my position. So I actually expected him to play queen f6 here because that looked like the most... And he was playing quite quickly and confidently, so I was expecting him to go queen f6. You know, and I felt like he was positioned very comfortable, right? I think the only thing with Theo he lacks is maybe experience. I mean, he did really well in the British actually at the end. You know, he was like probably overall. I mean, he's picking up a lot. I noticed he beat a lot of good players. He beat Yoda Willow. Beat I think Toma maybe there as well. And I think he did well in one of the British Blitz qualifiers recently. Beat a couple of good players there. So he finished high up the leaderboard in the London one was one of the strongest qualifiers. He had a Northwest one today. I think Keith Arkle came first. The Southwest yesterday was won by Taron Canamaralia, and Wadsworth came second. I think Jacob Boswell was second in the Northwest qualifier. Yang Fang third. So Queen F6 I was concerned about, yeah, and I thought, yeah, I've really got nothing here, you know. I mean, one line possible was this, and then forced to trade. So he has to take with a pawn because he can't allow 97. So Queen A1 97. But, okay, maybe this is possibly what he wasn't happy about. But I thought here, actually, he's doing fairly well because it's pawn on B3 is weak. And he's quickly going to go F5 and solidify that. And the bishop is probably better than the knight. So that was one possibility to go Queen F6. I mean, lots of moves here for black. I was also thinking about Bishop D7. It's probably not the best move because it weakens D5. So I don't think he needs... I'm not really threatening to take on E6 because he can take back with the pawn or the queen. Or the queen maybe, yeah. So he played... I mean, maybe could have gone Rook D8, Rook E8 was another option, H6 was a possibility, or move the knight was another option. I think there's lots of ways to be equal here. Knight F6. Knight F6 is solid. You know, it's not clear exactly what I'm doing here. So he went Rook C8. So now I was looking at, okay, I quickly dismissed Bishop E4, D4, Knight D6, which is a silly idea because of Queen D6, Knight F5, Queen F8. But not Queen E5, Queen takes E5, Knight takes E5, Knight E7. Oh, no, actually that's good for black as well because King F8. No, it's not good because King F8, you've got Knight C8, Bishop C8, Rook D8, King E7, Rook takes C8. But it's a stupid variation anyway because... I mean, for example, after Knight D6, even if he wasn't winning with Queen D6, he's got lots of other moves which are fairly reasonable for him. I was also looking at Knight A7 here, but Knight A7, he can... The problem is he can take on D4. I think if he takes on A7, I go Queen A7, I'm quite comfortable. I've got what you call the eternal Knight on D4. The Capablanca used to win these endgames, apparently, with his great Knight on D4. Although, I think sometimes his isolated pawn positions are overrated. Because even there he could go... I mean, I think the thing is, it's just like a static advantage for a long time. So it's uncomfortable for black. Unless they can somehow, you know, completely clarify the position. It's a little bit uncomfortable for him in this position. Right? But the problem in Knight A7 is he goes Knight D4. And if I go Knight C8, he has Knight E2 check. King F1, Bishop C8. And King E2 doesn't work because of just maybe even Knight G3 actually, but Knight C3 wins back the exchange if nothing else. But yeah, it just doesn't work for white. So Knight A7, Knight D4, and if Queen D4, then he can play maybe even Rook, some kind of Rook C2. That's possible, I guess, this line because I thought he had Rook C5 there actually, but now think about it, now I have B4. Oh, but then Rook C4. I was just afraid my knight was going to get trapped on A7, so I didn't go Knight A7. So in the end, I decided if I go E3, might move the bishop away. So I thought I've got to, you know, and then somehow my knight's looking a bit stupid, you know. Somehow if I go E3, Bishop D7, Knight C3, he can trade on D4, and I could be in trouble. Tactically. So I decided to take, because at this moment he can't take with a pawn because the bishop takes E4. So he took with a queen. So this was the main line, right? I think at this moment the position is slightly better for white, maybe. I would associate it slightly better for white because mainly because of this weakness on d5. So if you look at a position, this b pawn is just as weak as his pawn probably. His king is fairly safe. My bishop is quite a good piece, even though it's blocked by the knight. It's got long-term potential. And he could have easily played a move like h6. It's actually interesting the way he played it, because I think also maybe he was slightly concerned that I would... sorry, I went e3 here. Sorry, yeah, so he could have maybe gone h6, but it's interesting the way he handled the position, because he went here. But he played it quite quickly, so I was like, right, okay, he probably hasn't, unless he's some sort of genius, he probably hasn't checked all the variations here. Because, you know, there's lots of stuff going on. And it's actually quite a sharp position. So he's got some serious ideas now, like going queen f5 and going for checkmate. Or queen g4, or h5, h4. So I looked at rook c1, but that looked too slow for several reasons. Maybe even knight d3 is a good option for black. So rook c1 just looked wrong. I couldn't find any other move other than the move I played. I thought if I wait too long, he's going to... But queen d4 felt like a serious try. So I think this is where he made a decisive mistake. I don't know. Again, I've not checked with the engine, so I have no idea. But I think... So if you were black in this position, what would you play? Could even flip the board. Because I feel like the move that he played is a difficult problem after queen d4 for black to solve. But I think that he made a mistake here. He did think for a while, but then he made what I would say was a mistake. Because he went f5. So after queen d4 he went f5. I think that's a serious mistake. So when he originally played it, I thought that's a really good move. I'd seen that move in advance, but I thought, yeah, that's really clever. But I think it's actually bad. I think he should do something else, but I'm not sure what. So for example, he could play h5. Was an option. And the important point to realise is that queen d5 is not necessarily a threat, because of queen d5, rook check, bishop f1, knight f3 check. Now if I go king h1 with the idea that rook... No, it doesn't work because of rook f1 and he's got rook f2. So I have to go here and then he goes check. And he's got minimum draw, because if I go here, I think I'm possibly even losing after this, right? I'll just get mated in quite an amusing way, actually. Oh no, hang on, it's not quite mate, because I can go to h5. It looks super scary, but maybe it is going to be mate. Is this mate? It feels like this is checkmate, right? Very nice. So that's forced, but of course after knight f3, I'm obviously not going to h3. Knight e1, I'll go back. But now he can either go knight f3 and make a draw, or he could potentially maybe think about rook c2 and try and win. So that's not really what white wants. Probably rook c2, I got rook f5 and I'm okay. But knight f3 anyway is at minimum draw, so that's no good for white. So h5, the point is that f5 is trying to defend e4, but I don't necessarily think that's such a huge threat, because after this, okay, he takes back, and then he takes here. So now he's got double attack. Now let's say I go rook d5. Now he could also play the same variation with the pawn on h6, and now he could maybe just go knight g6. But knight g6 now, rook h5 is better for white. No, it's not better for white because of queen d1 check. Sorry. So he could even play knight g6, but also knight g4 is possible. So I'll probably give that an exclamation mark. I was thinking about this while I was waiting for the bus to go back to Anik. I saw this variation in my head, because the point is that here he goes knight f6, and if queen b7 he's got rook c1 check and knight h5 and he wins. But in fact, as we already established, there's also queen d1 check here, followed by knight e3 is also possible. So there's actually a lot of stuff going on here, and I don't think I'm necessarily worse, but I think I'm not better either. I mean, I can play h3. No, I can't play h3. So I have to maybe... I'm not sure what I play here, actually. I mean, I could maybe go knight d4. Yeah, this actually may be dangerous for white because this knight is now very dangerous on g4, right? This is the way you can lose the game as white. Because it suddenly looks like you're pressing, and then suddenly they play knight g4, and then they've got these nasty threats. Anand, for example, was one of the players that I always sort of looked up to when I was younger. He was always very good with his knights. Like very dangerous. Spielman, the player I mentioned earlier, was another. Tony Miles. So knight g4 is like very dangerous. So maybe after, say, h5, I don't go... But if I play the move I played in the game... Okay, this is a good test. After f5, what did I play? I think what I played, the engine will probably like. I think this is maybe the top move. According to the engine, I reckon. Because... It was like a test here. It was like, what do you play, right? It's kind of an obvious move, but it's just incredibly powerful, I think. I sort of like got it by process elimination because I realised, as I said before, I can't take on d5 because he makes an immediate draw. With this knight a free check, and maybe, like I say, maybe you can even try and win this. Probably not, but I mean, you could even maybe try something like, could you go g6 or try and win? But it's probably too much, right? But I don't like my king position here. Even though I'm a pawn up, this feels shaky for me. Yeah, bishop c4, you can just go like king f8 maybe, or something like that. So after f5, okay, so if you pause your video, unpause, what did I play? I went h3. Which I think, even like blow my own trumpet is worthy of like 2 exclamation marks. It's so powerful. I think that wins the game basically. Like, I could be wrong. Like check this game. I think h3 is like a winning move. So f5 is a mistake. I think h5 and it's unclear, right? Again, might be completely wrong with the evaluations. I mean, Theo's a good player. I'm sure he'll get his revenge on me soon enough. I mean, the problem is you have to beat these kids when they're younger because, it's also like a 9-year-old. I mean, how strong is he going to be in like 4 or 5 years' time? It's frightening to think. I mean, the only thing that we have protecting us is the older players. Is that, well, firstly, you can go into seniors at some point, and secondly, like a lot of the better juniors, they just end up right. These British tournaments are rubbish. Let's gravitate to the proper events, right? I mean, if you're like a world-class player, you're going to end up playing people like Magnus, in sort of like Vikanze or something like that. You can play in Olympiad or whatever, World Championships. So you're not going to be playing in sort of grotty weekenders, So that's one thing in my favour, but it is kind of scary now. Like when you play these weekenders now, it's like you're playing players who are like over 30 years younger than you, almost every round, and you think, well, I'm giving them quite a big head start, really. But yeah, after Queen d4, yeah, I think h5 is unclear, but or even h6, also same idea, or g6. Like just don't go f5. I think f5 is a losing move because after h3. So say for example after h5, if I go h3. It's also quite a critical test. But now he can go Queen f5. This is a big difference because now it's not check on d5. So now he can start creating counterplay. There's quite a serious difference. So how do I respond to that move? If I go Queen d5, he goes Queen f2. If I take on e4, he takes to the pawn, and knight d6 I don't have because knight f3 check. Just to show that variation, like here, knight d6, knight f3 check. I mean, he couldn't go rook c5 there, by the way, because I just win on the spot with bishop takes pawn. Oh no, hang on, sorry, it's not quite winning, but he's got that's after f5, h3. He can't go rook c5 because of bishop e4. And then if he takes here, I take here. And if he takes with a pawn, I go here, and if he goes knight f3, I just go king g2, and if he takes here, I go queen d5, and I'm winning. Because I'm in time to take the pawn or take the knight. So, but yeah, I think h5 was actually okay because so is it like h3, queen f5, and if f4, maybe there's f4 as an option, but then okay, knight g3 doesn't work because of queen e5, right? But I think he can just move a knight, maybe even here, queen d5, knight g3 here, for example, it's possible. Or take first and go knight g3. And again, I think this is unclear, this endgame. I mean, possibly white could try and press it, I'm not sure. Actually, just king f2, right? But then he goes h4, he anchors a knight. And maybe here I would objectively, okay, unclear is probably wrong now. Unclear, maybe objectively you could argue that white's slightly better, at least slightly better, maybe even clearly, but I'm not sure. So f4 was possibly one idea. I guess knight f3 doesn't quite work because of bishop f3, queen h3, bishop e4, queen g3, bishop g2, right? Knight f3, bishop takes, yeah. And if rook c2 at the end, I've got queen d5. So just show that variation. So knight f3 takes. I mean, even bishop g2 is good. This is nonsense. Like here, rook c2, queen d5 I think is good. But I suppose, is it completely over? Oh yeah, I think so, because there's queen f3 if he waits. I know you can go check and make a draw, right? Oh wow. Okay, this is equal. So this is a very easy variation to annotate because it's equal. So always put in evaluations, put in you know, like you try and add character to your. I mean, I worked with a student recently. He's a very good player, by the way, and he showed me how he annotates his games. And I thought this is just not showing his personality at all because it's just computer variations that he's put in, and he's not putting any kind of personality to his annotations. You know, maybe putting. I don't even think it's necessary to put in text, but sometimes it can be useful to add in a little bit of text just to add a little bit of personality to it. You want to show somebody. You want somebody to see your annotations and think, oh, this guy's an interesting player, or is a good player, whatever. Okay, this I don't think this variation works. I think this is losing. I mean, but I've just basically put in like the wrong. I think knight f3 is losing, right? But I'd probably just miss. Like for example, to queen h3, you could just go bishop g2 is probably winning, right? I don't think knight f3 works, but my gut feeling. But I mean, he doesn't have to do that. He could go knight c6 or knight g6. And then again, like you could just go knight g3. And even if he loses b7 pawn, he's probably going to be reasonably happy here. Rook c5, for example. If rook d5, then rook check. Or even rook takes a knight e3. Maybe he's fighting for an advantage here. I mean, my pawns are very weak. Yeah, interesting lines. We could go rook d8, king h7, bishop d5, knight e3, bishop f7 is probably quite close to a draw. No, sorry, I'm hanging b5 in that line. So yeah, I think this is the way to go. Basically, I think this is the way to go, and I think he's fine. Like rook f1 is too slow here. I would guess. You know, so I think f5 was a serious, because after h3 I did not see a good move for black. I mean, maybe there's a move here, but I just didn't see it. You know, he was thinking for a long time here, I was thinking for a long time, and I don't think either of us saw a good move here. I mean, I just don't think there is a good move here for black. The problem is, if you go rook d8, I've got knight c7. pawn was going to drop. So this is also bad. So after h3, he played. He fought for a long time, and he went knight f7. Yeah, I mean the other problem is after h3, if he goes rook c2, I can just take, I think, and he doesn't have time to take on f2 because e5 is hanging, and if he moves the knight, then f5 is hanging. So he played knight f7, but now I took, and then I went king h2, and this is the point of h3. That suddenly I've got this. Also, that's why you don't want to go h4. So you know, in some variations, he doesn't have knight g4 check. But now king h2, and now he's dead lost, because if he takes here, I take, and if he goes here, I think I can just go king g1, and then when he moves the knight, bishop d5. So he tried g6, but now this ending is losing. Like knight d6, I'm afraid to take the pawn. He has to take, because otherwise, I mean, he could try like rook c3, for example, rook b1, but the problem is I'll just take probably and just allow him to take on b3. Maybe other moves are good, but also have knight f7 and rook d7, rook b7 would be winning. So yeah, so here now he can't really go say rook b1 because of rook d8, rook d7. I thought he'd try this, and if here, then here. But the problem is I can just go, maybe b4 is also winning. But I think I'll just take and then come back to e7, or go to e7. And this should be completely winning because so this is the main game, right? But he didn't play rook c7 here. He went b5. I went rook here, and he went b4, and I went rook d4, and he resigned. Because now he's going to lose the e pawn as well as the b pawn. So he probably has to try something like rook c6, and if rook e4, rook b6. But then I've got two extra pawns, and they're connected. So they're going to eventually be passed pawns. Well, the e pawn's already passed, but eventually the f pawn will be passed as well. So he resigned. I thought it was a good battle, and I say, you know, like, I don't want to show off. I don't look like I'm bragging or whatever, but by showing this game, because I know he's a good player, but it was a good battle. And I think, you know, playing his juniors now, you feel like I never played junior chess, but yeah, somehow I feel like I'm playing junior chess now at the later part of my career. You know, the weird thing is I never played any junior chess. You know, I was reading about this Louis Cheng, and he won the World Under-8 Blitz Championships. And Supratip Banerjee used to represent Scotland, but now is living in London, I believe, and so he's now representing England. Won the bronze medal in the under-10s. So he's also very promising. But yeah, they're scary good, those kids. But, you know, but also, yeah, people like Theo Khoury, we don't know how good they can become. It all depends on their motivation to improve. Even the kid I played, was like 18, I played in round 3, was really good, the Indian guy. Kid I played in the final round today, he was a Ukrainian refugee. I think he was pretty pleased with his result because obviously he drew with a GM, and he had a good result in the morning game as well. So basically, you just play junior tours. But anyway, that's how I would annotate a game, roughly speaking, and wouldn't always add these many variations. So it'd be interesting to know what you think. If anyone wants to run this through an engine, feel free to do so. How bad are my annotations? Am I wrong about f5 being a losing move? You know, let me know in the comments, please. Please let me know. what the engine says, because I honestly don't know. I think it's actually better. This is my advice. It's better to actually do your own annotations, because as soon as you start using the engine, you just switch off. You know, you just right. Engine says this, engine says that. It's basically babysitting you. So you're not using your brain. So when you play a game, you do this method, and you might not even you stop this method, and then you look at the engine later. But actually, probably what you should do is like leave it for a few days and still thinking about the position, especially if it's a very complicated game. And only then, maybe after a few days or a few weeks or whatever, when you've added to the analysis, then you maybe check it with the engine at the end. So you always leave the engine to the end, right at the end. In an ideal world, I honestly believe that's a much better way of doing it than just basically what most people do, is just stick it on the engine. But some games are just like, well, that wasn't particularly interesting to me. Okay, I look at the engine with the engine. Or it's like, you don't have much time in the tournament, and the next round, just check with the engine. What was the interesting moment in the game? I honestly think that's a better way to improve. Do your own annotations. Didn't take me very long to do that. And it's much easier to do it straight after the game. If I left it for like a month and tried to annotate that game, I would honestly just forget everything that I thought about. But I thought this is quite an important variation. That I don't know what the evaluation of this position is, but this kind of looks a bit scary because f2 is quite weak. Maybe rook f5 is a move. Oh, but then he goes g6, right? Yeah, he goes g6 because rook f4 does queen b5. So it's possible here that he's clearly better. And maybe he's better. I don't know. I mean, honestly, it doesn't feel like he's better. It probably the engine would just say it's equal somehow, but I mean, it's probably he's either winning or it's equal, right? I mean, I don't think black's in any danger anyway. But it's easy to look at his position from afar and think that white is better. I mean, there's other moves here. I mean, I don't have to go rook d5 might be a mistake. Queen d5 is a better move, right? Maybe. There's also rook b1 as an option. So, I mean, this is silly analysis because rook b1 is also... I mean, rook b1 I looked at knight f3 check, actually. In the game I saw knight f3 check, which is interesting. And then knight d2. So, probably also equal, right? Like king here and then... maybe just knight d2, right? And if I could also take on b7, right? But then queen b1, queen takes king h7. Wow. Yeah, and suddenly my king is exposed. This is a problem. My king is bad. Anyway, yeah, the chess is a continually fascinating game. Queen f5 is also possible here, by the way. But yeah, probably just bail out here and just make a draw, right? Knight d4. Maybe you could even argue white's slightly better because of the extra pawn on the king side. And this pawn is not really going anywhere. Like, what does he play here? Because now he can't invade. Anyway, so that's my thoughts on the game. Please let me know what you think. Have I made too many bloopers in the analysis? And that was my game against Theo Khoury from Northumbria Congress.